Greetings, my friends. Father Leo here. 'Tis the first Sunday of Lent. And for some of us, we have memories of our years gone by and how we were presented for Lent. The three key words were pray, fast, and almsgiving. Those are the three words you hear every year in Journey in your church as you began the season of Lent. Well, times are changing. Do you notice that? Not too many people are still watching black and white TVs. Matter of fact, the TVs we have today are quite different from the originals. Life is moving on, and unless we move on with it, then like everything else, we'll get left behind, which in many ways our religion has indeed got left behind. So I have a couple thoughts for Lent for you this year. Right now, I have at hand here my pet cat, Jerry, who's climbing all over me and wants to help me preach this homily. Now he's down on the floor. Maybe he'll leave me alone. Okay, let's go to it. The theme running through the first readings today really might recall a lot of memories from you. It does for me. It says that Adam and Eve are in the garden. They ate of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and God threw them out of the garden, and their eyes were opened. So when you look at that, you can see why, unfortunately, in the 4th century, and remember, the 4th century is 400 years later. Well, it's more than 400, it's probably 500 or 600 years after this was written. But a famous theologian by the name of Augustine took that passage and he renamed it. He renamed it original sin. And of course, somehow that took life of its own, legs of its own, and traveled the Christian world. And I dare say that many of us, in our growing up, we heard of original sin. Many young parents who brought their babies for baptism was to get them cleansed of original sin. So that was kind of what you're looking at. Original sin, but it also set for the theme of the sin mentality that permeates all of Christianity even today. And in days gone by, you'd sometimes hear on Sunday where the preacher referred to the people as a group of sinners. My God, can you imagine that? That was crazy. That was awful. And then in the second reading, even Paul, like Augustine, by one man's transgression. So he points his finger back to Adam and Eve. Especially Adam, since in those days, in their life and their culture, women didn't count. So obviously he points his finger at Adam. One man's trespass. And he said, there's where all the trouble started in the world, by the choice made by Adam. His sin. But however, we get to the gospel, and there's hope here. It says that Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness, into the desert. And if you read the story of Jesus in the desert, it's where he really experienced an awakening, seeing with new eyes. And he saw God in a whole new way, as a God of unconditional love, a God who was present, a God of intimacy, of relationships. That was a big thing. A God of relationships. And when you read the gospel stories, that's Jesus. He's a man who lives that and preaches relationships. The healing and reconciliation of relationships. Go back to the first reading again. Go back there, where it talks about one's man's transgression, original sin. You see, we've changed our mind. A lot of spiritual writers today have really changed their mind on this and no longer see it as proof of original sin at all, but rather they describe the beginnings of human race as original blessing, and something to celebrate the wonder of new life and the possibilities of new life. And so original blessing, and blessing, of course, means goodness. So really what our spiritual writers today are saying is, look upon a birth of a new life, a new baby, if you will, or any new life. It's a blessing. It's a good thing. It's something to love and to celebrate and nurture and bring to fullness of life, to maturity. So it's a whole different mentality, you see. We know that later on, those who taught original sin, then you had Bishop Anselm in the 11th century, who taught the notion of atonement. And that's a killer. That's the worst thing that was ever imposed on the minds and hearts of the followers of Jesus, the notion of atonement. And it was based on the feudal system that he saw all around him. And he took and used that feudal system as a model for bringing it into Christianity in the form of atonement. Now, you know, atonement means that God has been offended by original sin and every other sin since then. And somehow humans have to make peace with this offended God, with this angry God, this sky God, this authoritarian God, this punitive God. And they weren't able to do it alone. They needed somebody who could represent God and humans. And so you get the idea of Jesus, the incarnation. He's the Son of God. He's also the Son of Mary, divine and human. So he was able to offer himself as a sacrifice to atone for the sins of the world. And by atoning for the sins of the world through his death on the cross, to reconcile human beings with God. Now, in that reconciliation, of course, it's a limited reconciliation, in the sense that God says, "Okay, now we're back and ready to do business again. I look favorably upon you." But humans are still born into the world in sin, original sin. And religion stresses sinfulness. And if you remember, and I certainly remember well as a young lad growing up, how I hated Lent, because it was always about giving up, not enjoying, somehow sacrificing, doing without. It wasn't a pleasant time for me, and I dare say it wasn't for anybody else. But we were told that's the way to go. We've got to somehow atone for our wrongfulness, our mistakes, our sinfulness, in the hopes of being forgiven if we went to confession during Holy Week. You remember that. I do anyway. And I hated Lent. I hated Lent. What I'm going to suggest to you today, since we talk about not original sin, but original blessing, that is something very good. Birth is a very good, it's new life. And it's something to celebrate, to rejoice, to sing and dance over. So what I'm suggesting to you, if you buy into original blessing instead of original sin, if you believe that you don't need atonement, never separated from God, if you believe that God is with us and not a distant side guy God, if you really can handle and see that, then I say, this Lent, let's do something different. St. Paul said, be fools for Christ's sake. Well, maybe being foolish for Christ's sake opens the door for us to celebrate during Lent. And what I'm suggesting to people is this Lent, take on something take on, if you're going to celebrate Lent and grow and experience transformation and enjoy life and be fuller, more. St. Irenaeus wrote the line, "The glory of God is a person fully alive." St. Augustine wrote, "One of the surest presence of the sign of God is laughter." Laughter. So what I am suggesting to you, and to myself, of course, is that during Lent, laugh a lot. Laugh a great deal. Laugh generously. Laugh abundantly. Laugh when it's foolish to laugh. Laugh. Let that energy, that joy energy within you, be released and experienced in your body. That energy of joy, whereby you laugh. It means that when you look at some things in the world, you need to decide, I'll laugh at that. Don't get me wrong. There's times to be serious, of course there are. But by and large, as we live out each day, my guess is most of the things we see and hear and experience, if we really look at them with a sense of humor, with the eyes that see the paradox in them, and then decide, I'm going to laugh at that. I'm going to give it a chuckle, or I'm going to give it a real belly laugh. And the other thing you can do too is stimulate the laughter of others. Tickle their funny bone. Tickle their funny bone. Take the trouble to learn some jokes. Perhaps clean ones if you can find any. If not, you may have to use some dirty ones. As long as they're really funny. That's the big thing. So that people can't help but laugh. I know over the years I've heard a lot of jokes. Fantastic jokes. And I got a lot of laughter. Most of them have been clean jokes. But sometimes I've heard some not clean jokes. I didn't want to laugh, but the darn thing was so funny I couldn't help it. I laughed at them because somehow the twist to the story was such that it just ignited that sense of laughter, energy within. So like I say, simplify Lent. Decide to enjoy it. Show that you enjoy this time, this season. That you enjoy life, that you enjoy living. Show that you know that you are an original blessing, not an original sinner. Show by your laughter that you enjoy life, this great gift that your parents gave you, and that the community has nurtured and brought you to the point where you are today. It's a fantastic journey, really, when you look at it. So what I'm suggesting to you is turn the tap. Let the laughter run like a stream. You know, we have that song, "Peace is flowing like a river." Well, how about joy flowing like a river? How about laughter flowing like a river? How about laughter flowing like a river, which is life-giving not just for ourselves, for the people who join in with us in laughter? And I think if we did that, we're probably going to live a Lent that's much more meaningful. I remember the last parish I was in, one of the things I did, and along with my committee, of course, birthed Holy Humor Sunday. Now, Holy Humor Sunday was the first Sunday after Easter. And on that day, we guaranteed everybody in the church was going to laugh. The choir sang funny songs, funny decorations, funny readings. As a preacher, funny jokes. Laughter abounded in that church building on Holy Humor Sunday. And by doing that, Now, when it first started, those who started Holy Humor Sunday, they did because they wanted to show that light triumphed over darkness, the resurrection. Light over darkness. And so Holy Humor Sunday was birthed. And we took it a step further to celebrate it. That we too are experiencing new birth as a result of the resurrection. That we were resurrected people. We really had something to laugh about, to celebrate, to sing about. Say, my God, it's great to be alive today. Let's celebrate it and have lots of fun. Eat, drink, and be merry. Enjoy. You know, over the years, religion has become too serious. In many ways, it took all the fun out of life, or a lot of the fun out of life. That's not it. That is not it. Life is to be celebrated, to be enjoyed, and to recognize what a great gift it is. And we give much glory, more glory to God by celebrating life than going around with a long face and punishing the body by denial. No, that's not it. That is not it. And so I welcome you into Lent, and I hope that you will indeed make up your mind that this Lent you're going to laugh yourself and you're going to make other people laugh. And Lent, the 6 weeks of Lent, is going to be the best Lent you've ever lived in all of your life. This I'm hoping for you. I know I'm going to do it. And if I happen to meet you in the street somewhere and I tell you a funny joke or make you laugh, you know I'm just keeping Lent. I'm living Lent. Lent is to be lived, not to be kept. It's to be lived with joy, celebration, and with laughter. God bless.